Hello, my name is Maxwell Matcham, and I'm the Natural Heritage Education Coordinator here at the Oak Ridges Marine Land Trust. And we're going to get started in just a second now. We're going to begin with a few slides about the Land Trust, and then I will introduce our speaker to you, and we'll get to the presentation. And this is one I'm really excited for. Lauren's a good friend of mine and fantastic science communicator and educator. And yeah, I think everybody's going to really enjoy this. I will share my screen with you. Thank you for joining us today here at the Oak Ridges Marine Land Trust. I'd like to begin today with a land acknowledgement. So today we are gathered on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit. We would like to acknowledge that Indigenous peoples have had and continue to have a presence and deep connections with the lands on and near the Oak Ridges Moraine. These lands are the meeting place of two treaty nations, the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and those of the First Williams Treaty. We'd like to thank them and other Indigenous people for sharing this land with us. We acknowledge that this land and the people, because the first step in reconciliation is recognizing peoples and their inherent rights to the land, and that they have been subject to colonial oppression and injustice, which continues to this day. We need to continue a lifelong journey of understanding how our collective past brought us here, where we are today, and how to create a better future in relationship with Indigenous peoples and the land. We'd like to give gratitude to Indigenous peoples on and near the Oak Ridges Moraine who have deep kinship of reciprocity with this land and have since time immemorial. We recognize that working together will strengthen our responsibility to the land, including ecological traditional knowledge systems for an equitable, sustainable future. So how does the Oak Ridges Moraine help the marine? 90% of the marine is privately owned, and we work with landowners to help protect ecosystems on the marine. And we use a variety of different tools in order to do that. So a land trust is a nonprofit charitable organization which acquires land and interests in land, things like conservation easements, for the purposes of conservation. We raise money to purchase and maintain land, and we have to protect that land in perpetuity. So if a property gets purchased by the Oak Ridges Marine Land Trust, or we have a conservation easement on it, it will be protected forever. How do we protect the marine? Well, we contribute to the federal government's goal of protecting 30% of land by 2030. We connect people with nature. We do a lot of educational programming like we're doing right now. We go into elementary schools and go to farmers markets and put on educational displays and do all sorts of stuff with video and social media. We support climate change resiliency. We protect green corridors between natural areas. And we help protect ecologically significant lands on the marine. There's something called the Ecological Gifts Program that's really important to what we do. And it's a way that landowners can get a real tax break if they do things like conservation easements, where they donate their land. And legacy giving is another really important way that we get properties and that we get our funding here at the Land Trust. Right now, we're working on a really exciting project. I'm a huge bird lover, so I'm really thrilled that I get to be a part of it. This is the Kirtland's Warbler Habitat Restoration Project, and we're doing a volunteer seed collection project for that. So right now we have a property in Northumberland County near Ganaraska Forest that we're restoring to be habitat for an endangered songbird called the Kirtland's Warbler. Now the Kirtland's Warbler spends its winters in the Bahamas, and they breed only around the Great Lakes. Most of them breed in Michigan, but there's a few breeding pairs in Wisconsin and in Ontario. And they depend on pines of two species, the jack pine, and we found out more recently the red pine, to build their nests in. But those pines have to be between about 5 and 15 years of age. They're extremely picky about where they build their nests. But historically, this wasn't a problem for them because there was forest fires, and Indigenous peoples had controlled burns as a way of managing the ecosystem. Jack pines in particular, they depend on fire for their cones to open and for their seeds to germinate. But with the arrival of European colonizers, these traditional land management practices were suppressed, and populations of the Kirtland's warbler were devastated. Now, they've recovered really spectacularly in Michigan, but they're still on the endangered species list in Canada. And so we're trying to restore some habitat for them in Northumberland County. And it won't just benefit the Kirtland's warbler, it'll benefit all kinds of species like the short-eared owl, bobolink, eastern meadowlark, the eastern hognose snake, the monarch, that really depend on these oak pine habitats. This project is aimed for people age 55 plus, the collection project doing right now, but anyone can participate. And we've been putting on a educational webinar series to teach people how to identify plants to help with the seed collection. And this is the last installment out of 4 webinars, but they're all available to view on our YouTube page. And in just a minute, I'll throw the volunteer registration link in the chat if anyone's interested in part of that. And we have a few interesting webinars and other events coming up. We have another one on sort of the grasslands theme coming up on March 13th at 12. That'll be a lunch and learn from 12 to 1. And it's being put on by 2 people from the Hazel Bird Nature Reserve, which is an amazing property out in the Rice Lakes Plains area. And on April 23rd, we're doing a webinar called Birds of the York Regional Forest. And there will be an in-person birding walk to go along with that we're hoping to have at Happy Valley Forest Tract. And then looking way in the future towards Pride Month in June, I'm going to be leading a Pride Month nature walk at one of our private nature reserves. And if you go to the oakridgesmarine.org website, you can find out all about these events and workshops. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Lauren in just a second. But before I do, I'm going to introduce her. So Lauren is a museum educator and a multidisciplinary artist. I know Lauren from the Royal Ontario Museum, where Lauren is a ROM Kids instructor. So she helps run some of the summer camp programming there. And yeah, just an amazingly talented and knowledgeable individual. If you ever have questions about ancient Egypt or any of the taxidermy animals at the museum, you know who to hit up. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce, hand it over to Lauren and we can get learning about iNaturalist.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Maxwell, and thank you to everyone who's joining now and maybe in the future to learn about using iNaturalist. So I started to use iNaturalist really pretty recently as this past summer. We had a great donation of iPads and we wanted to use them in a fun way with the class I was teaching where we would go outside. And I wanted to go beyond just taking photos and photography. I wanted to also use it as a learning tool. And so that's how I came to use iNaturalist. So I'm going to share my screen and share this PowerPoint I have. There's some videos, and then we'll also go and look at a little more deeper at a profile using Maxwell's profile, who is also an avid iNaturalist user, which is really cool. So I'm just about to share my screen here. Right here. Okay. Awesome. I'm going to move myself out of the way. Ooh, I hope that works. And I'm going to hit view. Is this the best tech thing I can do here, Maxwell? Is this good? This looks okay?
That looks great.
Okay, awesome. So thank you everyone for coming to learn using iNaturalist. Now, I think a lot of the times when we go out in nature, we want to disconnect from technology, but iNaturalist is kind of a nice kind of gentle piece of technology that might, you know, deepen or reignite our love of nature and is a useful tool when identifying plants, species, animals that we've never seen before, or maybe we see all the time. So let's get started. So here's a bit of our agenda for using iNaturalist. We're going to learn about what is iNaturalist, how do I use iNaturalist, why should I use it, and then we'll also have time for a Q&A. So I'll let iNaturalist, let's discuss what is iNaturalist. So first of all, iNaturalist was actually started by 3 students in their final project at UC Berkeley School of Information. And they were interested in creating some sort of network where people could easily get an answer of like, what is this plant? What's this species? But they also wanted to have a way where if you could look it up, you were also engaging with people in your local community and beyond. So in their own words, iNaturalist describes itself as an online social network of people sharing biodiversity information to help each other learn about nature. And their primary goal is to connect people to nature. But let's get a little more simpler. At its core, iNaturalist is a website and an app. It's available on all devices for free. You can go to the App Store, you can go to the Apple Store, you can download it on your iPad, on your phone, and you can even access it online on the website. And what's cool is the National Geographic Society in 2017, they heard about this iNaturalist because after those students graduated, they still wanted to continue to like work on this cool project. And so with help from National Geographic, they were able to launch this. And as of 2023, it is fully nonprofit. And here's some more info. I'm going to share a little bit more about iNaturalist. So it is a nonprofit. It was created by UC Berkeley students. It was built on the concept of mapping and sharing observations of biodiversity across the globe. What's cool is you might find for example, Virginia strawberry plant that's in my slides later on in Ontario, but then you might also find it in the States. And so it can show you when you find something just all around the world where species are. You're also able to connect with experts and fellow naturalists, everyone from students to real biologists, real scientists, and everyone in between is on iNaturalist. And so that's really cool because you can get instant identifications or suggestions really fast. If you would like to opt in, you can contribute to science. So everything is very customizable, including even your photos. If you don't want your photos to be able to, be used by a naturalist, it's up to you. You opt in. You opt in for what information you share. You even opt in for what locations you share. It's all customizable to you. For example, I'm really big on identifying the plants and learning that. Social network, I'm not into that part, but that's okay. It's up to you, whatever is useful and enjoyable for you. So here is from the iNatural website. You can record your observations, share with fellow naturalists, and discuss your findings. But it's even simpler than that. You can take or upload a photo, you get instant suggestions for identification, and then from there, you can learn more if you would like. You could learn about related species. You could see if this thing you're looking at maybe was found recently, how recently. You can see all these different photos, even from different stages of life. So it's really cool. Now, I'm going to show you a video of someone actually using it, and you'll see it's really that easy. You take your phone, take a photo, and you get instant identification for what it is. The term that they use on the website and on the app, it's called an observation. And they define that as an observation records an encounter with an individual organism at a particular time and location. So just kind of the jargon that iNaturalist uses, a photo of a caterpillar, a photo of prints, they use that, they call that an observation. So it's really that simple. Here are 3 steps to take right now if I wanted to join iNaturalist and start identifying plants in my backyard or by the lake where I live. So you download the app or you can visit the website. Remember, it's free. It's iNaturalist.org or iNaturalist on any app store. You can make an account if you want. If you already have a Gmail, you can log in like that, or you can just make another username. Mine is called, I think, Lauren Bird and Nature Lover. You activate your account, so it'll send you an email to your email account to make sure you're ready to go. You wanted to make an account, and then you're ready to go. Now, here's a commonly asked question. Do I need Wi-Fi/internet/data to use iNaturalist? Yes and no. So for example, if I have gone to High Park and I've taken photos, to actually get those instant suggestions and to connect with other people, you do need to use internet or data or connect to Wi-Fi in some way. Now, for example, if I had a whole day at High Park, I was able to identify all these species, that will stay stored on my app, in my phone. And so I don't need Wi-Fi to necessarily access that. But for most of the time, if I do want to get like ideas for how to identify or like suggestions for identifications, you do need the internet. But that doesn't mean, for example, if you go for a walk, you can compare similar findings to findings that, let's say, like you already had before. But really, you do need the internet for if you're on a walk, it'd be best to connect to maybe like data, or you can just take photos, and then when you get home, you can identify them. So that's kind of fun too. Now, what can iNaturalist help me identify? Pretty much everything. So here's the list that iNaturalist gives you. So it's all life. And when we say all life, it's all living organisms at every stage of life. So for example, from a tiny seed to footprints to scat, right? Scat identification. If you've ever gone camping, that's a fun one. To even if you find an animal that is deceased, it will let you know what that is. It also, iNaturalist is good. The way it works is that it will try to identify what an item is or a subject is based on a common species. Okay, so let me see my next slide here. Oh, okay. I'll talk about what doesn't work on iNaturalist a bit later, but let's talk about why we should use iNaturalist. iNaturalist is a powerful tool to help us identify plants, animals, and other living things. It allows us to reconnect or strengthen our relationship to nature. What's cool is when you do an identification in your park, for example, let's say your local park, you can actually also learn to see if there's other people around you who maybe also go to the same park. I found my local park, Colonel Samuel Smith Park, and there's about 25 people who are in my local community, and they identify different plants and local fauna, and that's pretty cool. It's a really cool tool because you can learn more about each plant, about each species. It shows you a map so you can see if it's local, if it's invasive. It maps it all over the world. Sometimes you learn that there are certain birds or different species that might be in Canada and also might be in other places of the world too. And it's also a great way to share your knowledge on biodiversity and your love of nature. This is awesome for people who, let's say you're going on a walk and you kind of are bored doing the same thing every day. This time, maybe you want to actually identify what that flower is that you might always, have a discussion or debate about. There was one tree that I kept trying to say was a cherry blossom tree. It's a magnolia tree, of course, of course. So sometimes you could find cool things like that. Now, this is important. What is iNaturalist not for? And remember, we said all living things, but it's not for all ecological phenomenon. So for example, it won't work on rocks, water features, trash, or human stuff. So for example, if I showed this waterfall photo, iNaturalist hasn't been taught or trained to identify water. But what it is what it is trained to do is to look maybe what else is in the picture. So for example, there's trees, there's roots. It would try to identify that. It's not going to know what the waterfall is. For example, this picture of a geode. It can do, iNaturalist is really good at identifying shells, even like a snail shell. It can tell you what shells it is or certain things by the beach. That can be helpful. But geodes and rocks, it cannot, doesn't work for that. So for example, if I showed iNaturalist this photo, it might actually read the human hands holding the geode and then would tell me maybe more about that. Okay. Also, it's not a tool for just identifying human stuff. So for example, if I uploaded a photo of, say, a Coca-Cola can, it could not tell me it's a Coca-Cola can. It could not tell me it's a can. It would honestly just try to see if there maybe is a houseplant in the background, something like that. So it's going to try to look for what it's been trained to do. Okay. iNaturalist works best when you focus on one single subject. So a leaf, a moss, a seed, maybe on your hand, because it's trying to look for a connection to a species name or classification. So this is a great photo. It's strawberries, for example, Virginia strawberry. And so it's a clear photo pretty much, and it can zero in on that. Now, I also just want to take a second now to just show you what a profile looks like. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and I'm going to share some photos of Maxwell's account, if that's okay with you, Maxwell. Okay.
Of
Now,
course.
Maxwell has a awesome. Now, Maxwell is awesome because there are a lot of observations that Maxwell's made. So hold on, let me log out of here. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to show you some observations from Maxwell so you can get an idea of just what iNaturalist looks like on, say, a computer screen. Let me share my screen to observations. Okay, so for example, this is a observations from Maxwell, and you can see he has over 4,000 observations. And you can see some of these observations: a mallard, an otter, some fungi, even some footprints. So look, I'm going to look at this one, for example. I might see footprints. I see footprints all the time in the snow, and I'm always like, what animal is that? I can post this, and the app itself or website will give me suggestions. But what's cool is if you think, no, 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 that is not it. I have not seen that animal. No way. You can actually let other people suggest things. And these people, a lot of the times, they're very avid naturalists and experts. So for this one, for example, Maxwell said, I guess it's some sort of domestic cat. And then some other people also suggested an ID. And that's really cool because sometimes if you see certain birds or animals you're not familiar with, you might be able to learn that maybe that animal is not native to that area, but maybe they're just migrating. And so that's kind of cool. So look, we have feathers, geese, things like that. So it's pretty fun. As long as it's a living thing, you can identify it. I'm going to go back now for our final few slides to the page here. So give me 1 second here. Actually, the species name. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to talk about some examples of when you might want to use iNaturalist. Okay.
Right, I think your screen's not sure. Oh, there it is.
Oh, okay. There we
It's
go.
working.
Let me view slideshow. Okay. So think of iNaturalist as maybe not the focus of your whole walk, because really, if you're ever out in nature, that should kind of be the primary focus, right? To connect to nature, to enjoy the space you're in, and maybe to strengthen the relationships you have with other people, right? And so here's some examples. You might be out at High Park looking, having a picnic, and maybe you see some strange moss or something on a tree. That would be a good option. You could use iNaturalist. Maybe you are in your garden with your grandkids and you see a seed fall to the ground and you want to use iNaturalist. You find out it's a chestnut. Very cool, from a chestnut tree. Maybe you are out collecting fossils near Old Mill and you come upon a frog. What kind of frog is that? iNaturalist can tell you. So there's no wrong way to use iNaturalist for identifying plants, species, all living things. And it's really up to you how you want to use it. If you want to use it more like a social network, it's totally up to you. And what's cool is iNaturalist really encourages everyone to just get outside, connect with nature, learn new things, and maybe share some of that with people in your community, maybe your family, your friends. And it's pretty awesome. So iNaturalist is a community for naturalists and citizen scientists, biologists, nature lovers, and more. So I hope maybe after this webinar, you consider using iNaturalist, or maybe just have a bit more confidence when going outside and maybe trying to use a new technology. It could be fun and it might add some more value to maybe your walks. It might reignite your passion. And so I hope this was useful. And I hope you go out there and be brave and feel a little confident, more confident the next time you want to integrate some technology to your nature walks. So thank you guys so much. That's the end of the slideshow.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for us tonight? Please feel free to put them in the chat and I'll try to get answers. Somebody earlier was asking if you can use it to report an invasive species.
Yes, you can do that. Now, for example, yeah, you can do that in invasive species. What's good is there's might be already like existing observations from people in your community. So that's always helpful. I want to also note that let's say you go to the zoo and you take photos of animals, they will obviously not, the app sometimes will not know you're at the zoo, for example. And then if it's, say, a wild animal, like let's say like a tiger, it'll obviously say something like, oh, this species is critically endangered. And it might prompt you to maybe like highlight it because obviously like tigers aren't native to Canada. So sometimes if there's any issues like that, iNaturalist, they have a really good existing frequently asked questions, and everyone even on the app, they're really motivated to just like help people make nature, as accessible as possible with technology. So I encourage you guys, if you do have any questions, iNaturalist.org. It has almost any question that you can think of. So you can always check there as well.
Perfect. A question from Allison here saying, I uploaded a photo of a garden flower and it just sat there waiting to upload. So now what? I will say that sometimes it has trouble connecting, but
Okay.
oftentimes, yeah, if I go to a better internet source, like if I go back to my house, there's Wi-Fi, sometimes that works a
Mm-hmm.
little bit better, but sometimes the app is slow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jane asked, is it okay to use it in nursery to make sure the labels are
A nursery?
plant nursery?
Oh, a plant nursery. So, that's a really great question. So, for example, when you are using a plant nursery, there's an option if it is, I think it is cultivated slash captive. And
Yeah,
so basically, if you want to take photos of, let's say, like your plants, there's an option for you to mark it where it's like, oh, like this is not like a natural occurring plant. For example, I think I have, what do I have? A jade plant behind me that doesn't naturally like occur in Canada. So if I had it, I would say like cultivated, right? Or was it captive, cultivated? Do you know what it is,
yeah.
Maxwell? Like,
I
yeah.
think it gives it's captive slash cultivated, so you don't have to put a split hairs and figure it
Mm-hmm.
out. But anything that's like in a garden or if it's your dog or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you could do that. So that's really good. So if your seedlings began to grow, it would give you suggestions based on what the seedlings look like. So that would be really cool. I encourage you to do that. It did work on, I grew pansies and I grew them from a seed, and it could see that they were pansies when it was just like green little seedlings. So it really just will compare to previous images uploaded. So best of luck. Yeah, if you can do that.
Another really amazing app for plant ID called Picture This. And that one's
Mm-hmm.
really, it sort of specializes in plants. So you can't use that for things like birds or insects or feathers or mushrooms or anything like that. If you really,
Mm-hmm.
that one is a good option too. And then
Totally.
not a question so much as a comment, but somebody is saying that you can use iNaturalist for sounds as well. Like if you record the sound of a bird or a frog or something.
Yes. You know what? One of my colleagues from the ROM, Mark Peck, he's the bird technician. He uses that a lot for bird calls. Now, I don't know if the website version also has that capability. I think that might just be like a mobile version on like a phone. But yeah, that's really cool. You can do bird calls. And then when you hear bird calls, you can go, hey, excuse me, did everyone hear that cardinal? Because I heard it. So that's pretty cool too. And that just shows like all the options that are available to us, which is really cool.
Yeah. Another really great app
Mm-hmm.
if you're into bird calls is the Cornell Lab of Ornithology has an app called Merlin, and it will listen to the calls around you if you turn on the speaker on your phone, and it'll try to identify it using an algorithm. And it's not 100%, like it's not completely foolproof. Sometimes you'll get like a really rare bird that lives in like in Florida, in Etobicoke or something like that, and it's obviously
Okay,
just a
yeah.
mistake that it's making, but it's a really good, it usually gives you a really good ballpark. And it's
Okay.
for what it is, it's very well.
Oh, that's awesome. Nice. Yeah, it's just kind of fun tools to kind of help, you increase your enjoyment around nature, increase your, help with your hobbies, build your knowledge. So it's pretty fun.
Okay, someone says you can upload audio on the website. Well,
Okay,
and then
great. Awesome.
and Allison is still having trouble uploading um,
Mm,
unknown species. So it may sometimes it has trouble identifying the species too. I think
mm,
especially if it was something like a house plant, like, or a garden flower, it might be tricky for it
mm,
because it's more designed for wild species. Um, but like Lauren was saying earlier, there's if you try to get like a clear shot that really focuses in on something like a leaf, sometimes having multiple photos can be helpful. Um,
mhm.
yeah, so things like the focus and the lighting and how far you are away from the subject, those sorts of things can help. But Sometimes there are times when it does have trouble um, identifying
Mm.
stuff. I will say that some categories of life, there's more people on there that are enthusiastic about. So there's a lot more bird lovers out there. It's harder if you take a picture of like a freshwater mollusk, like a
Mm.
clamshell you find in Lake Ontario. There's far fewer people who are interested in that, and maybe it has less information to work with. Um,
Mhm.
but I guess as more people contribute to it and more people spend time on there, the better the program will get, the bigger the community will get.
Yeah.
It'll all get better.
Yeah. So I encourage you to maybe yeah, try maybe uploading a couple more photos, or even if like it doesn't give you an instant suggestion, there might be someone who can identify it for you. So I like to use that feature because at first I was like, okay, these people are going to know. And it's like people do know. There are people who are so passionate about, like, as Maxwell was saying, like whether it's birds, a specific type of flower, a specific type of tree. There are people who are just really passionate and they're like excited to help people identify the nature around them. So I would encourage you guys to maybe try it out, and hope it adds something to your love of nature.
Yeah. So I just threw my email in the chat if anyone has any more questions about working the app or if anyone else is having any other problems with it or if anyone ever just wants to talk about birds, um, please feel free to reach out. But I think that's all the questions we have tonight. But um, I just want to say thank you so much, Lauren, for leading this. And it was a wonderful presentation. And yeah, it's great to see so much enthusiasm and yeah, it's a wonderful app and it's really I feel like it's the one thing on my phone that like makes me happier and like improves my day most of the time. So, it's the one
Absolutely.
thing
Yeah.
like when you're out in a park, it's such a different experience to be able to yeah, identify the plants around you or the butterflies. It's like speaking a different language and yeah, to slowly get better at that over time and to learn more, it's an amazing resource. So I can't speak highly
Yeah.
enough of it. So thank you
Mm-hmm.
everyone for joining us this evening, and yeah, we'll see you at the next webinar. Bye now.
Awesome. Bye.